Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Jimmy Marion. And the other co-host, Darian Smith, is not feeling well. So, hey, Blazer Victory Podcast listeners and viewers, send a good word of encouragement to Darian. And, especially when you have a family and it starts with a kid, not, Daddy, I'm not feeling well. And then another kid, and then Shaniqua, then Darian. Like it's a rough. And Jimmy, hey, you went through it. What was that, last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Whew. So hey, definitely keep Darian and his family and your send positive thoughts towards them. And hey, hopefully they're at the end stretch this sickness. And
we need Darian to get better, that way he can enjoy this snowy weather. I mean, you don't want to be inside all day. You want to go outside and play in the snow. Darian, come on, we need you, brother.
Exactly. Come on, bro. We need you feeling better. So hopefully he's on the tail end of hopefully feeling better later today. Speaking of that, hopefully y'all are viewing this podcast and listening to a podcast because you don't have anywhere to go. Because of the snow is taking over Birmingham the Friday. But we want you to know, come Sunday, 4:00, join Blazer Victory Podcast at Cahaba Brewing Company. I know y'all are going to be antsy to get out somewhere, so why not join us Sunday for another watch party, or second watch party for the basketball season as UAB takes on FAU. Again, that is 4:00, and this podcast is sponsored by Cahaba Brewing Company, and we are going to spotlight the Oka-Uba IPA. Fantastic. Y'all know that's my favorite beer from their core offerings. So come down Sunday at 4:00 and enjoy an Oka-Uba IPA with me and Jimmy and Blazer fans, Blazer Victory listeners, and let's fellowship and hopefully get a dub. And I'm just now realizing, Jimmy, that we have not come on the free feed since our first watch party in the basketball season. That heartbreaker.
No, don't talk about that game. That game never happened.
Hey, okay, that's right. We're leaving that in 2024, 2025. Right. Hey, off to a good start. And let's transition to that. UAB, winners of 2 in a row in the AAC. Let's talk about that first game. The Tulsa beat down UAB. I mean, I think everything was clicking in this game. UAB wins 83-51 at home against Tulsa. There's not a whole lot to kind of unpack from this beatdown, but AJ Vasquez hit his best game this year, 27 points. Really good defensive effort from the Blazers.
Yeah.
But Jimmy, I'll throw it to you. Like, what can we take away from the first game that we'll talk about, the Tulsa game, and then we'll talk about the Tulane game in a few minutes?
We know the first thing that comes to mind for me is thinking about, again, we're not going to talk about that final game of 2024, but leading into 2025, I think about the response from the team, because the game, in which we would not discuss, was a difficult ending, and you get yourself hyped, because let's be real, the non-conference season was not what UAB team expected, wanted. It's not what the fans expected, wanted. And so you had this desire, right, to get conference play started off on that right note and to make a statement win, to gain back some of that momentum that was lost, and then to go out there and to have the lead that they did, and for the end to occur like it did, really could have been devastating. I mean, I'm sure it was devastating in the moment, right? But it could have bled into other games. Like, oh, well, we're conference play starting. It's all new. We got this. And then, the same thing happened again. Yeah. Like, maybe this just is what it is. Well, guess what? It ain't what it is, because UAB was able to come out against a Tulsa team and dominate from start to finish. Whenever you can hold anybody to 51 points, that is very impressive. Tulsa didn't have, Coach talked about it, their best performance. That goes without saying. They've got a quality coach that's trying to win and create a quality program. But they did not have a good night, and UAB had a lot to do with that, right? And you mentioned AJ Vasquez. I mean, it was so great to see him come out, and I mean, he took 20 shots, but he made 10 of them, so 50% from the field, 4 big threes, and just had that swag. He was plus 34, plus or minus, so he just had his imprint like on that game, and he was like the big takeaway from it. And UAB just shot the ball like well all night. I mean, looking at first half and second half percentages, UAB did well, excelled all night, and UAB just dominated in the specialty stats. I mean, 42 points in the paint is where UAB has thrived. UAB is now 7-2 in the year when they win that points from the paint battle. And you look at points off turnover, I believe they had the edge there as well. And when UAB does well, points off turnover, they're 9-1 when they win that category this season. So compare that to 0-6 when UAB loses that category, that being points off turnover. So UAB did what UAB has to do formula-wise, and they did it to the nth degree. And that's why they were so successful in this game and coming out with a big-time response and a big-time win.
Yes. And now, we'll transition to the Tulane game, where AJ did not have his best of night. So you look at the remainder of conference play, the remainder of the season. Like UAB needs a level of consistency from AJ Vasquez and Butta Johnson. But we would be remiss to start on this Tulane game. Yaks almost a triple-double, obviously.
Almost like a triple-double in the first half, wasn't it? I mean, he was trending in that direction like in one half of basketball. Now, could you tell that there were some NBA scouts in Bartow Arena that were there to watch Yaks? Could you tell there was maybe some extra motivation? Now, I know they've probably been there for other games, but they were talking about NBA scouts, watching Yaks play in that Tulane game. And he showed out. So I don't know. Let's get those same NBA scouts. Let's get them a ticket to the FAU game, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Come down to Boca.
And then then they go to Tampa after that, and they can just keep on coming back because we love Yaks. But man, that was the guy. Like, I mean, that was the performance where like, can we get more of that? Can we get more of that assertiveness? Because we just love it, Yaks, when you do that, man. You played a hell of a game, and we're definitely one of the major reasons why UAB was able to pull that out.
Yes, Yaks, 25 points in that Tulane game, 13 rebounds and 8 assists, 2 assists away from the triple-double. But UAB gets the dub 81-69 against Tulane in Bartow Arena. And shout out
John,
to
before you transition from Yaks, I'm sorry, he had 25 points scored, and he had 2 free throw makes. So sometimes you see, like, you're talking about guys that get that 20-plus or 30 points. They've got 10-plus free throws from the line. Like, Yaks had 11 made field goals on 13 attempts. He was perfect 1 for 1 from the three-point line. Like, again, I know we talk about it all the time, but that's unreal. Like, it's unreal what he did. So, anyways, I just had to say that before we transitioned off of him.
No, I'm glad you did, Jimmy. And let's just keep this. Hey, Yaks. Let's keep this. Let's make this consistent. Go into the. I don't know. You can get a damn near triple double every game, but hey, work them, buddy. Work them. In Boca this Sunday. But shout out again, another solid defensive effort. I think from the UAB Blazers. Only holding Tulane to 69 points, and Ron Hunter. That offense can be tricky to guard, and they've got a couple playmakers. But shout out to the basketball team, man. Held the Tulane Green Wave to 69 points, and our football team, Jimmy, gave up more than that in the football game.
Let's not talk about that game. Hey, for football, for our football fans that are listening to this podcast, we're taking a short. This is like a commercial break from all the recruiting stuff that is going on. We're sitting here now. We're getting notifications on our phone about who's committing where, what's going on. So hey, football. We don't need to talk about that Tulane game. That kind of awkward exchange at midfield with John Sumrall following it. We don't need to talk about all of that. No. We're good. We'll bring that up after we take our first L next season. Only kidding.
Right, but hey, we've got more football content to come, and even on the free feed. We crank out the recruiting updates on the Patreon. Again, shout out patreon.com/blazerpod, just $5 a month. We've got more content coming there as the commitments start happening, and they, as Jimmy just stated, they are happening as we speak. A bunch of them. Y'all see the tweets. But we're gonna do a free show too soon, and especially like as soon as Darian gets better, gets to feeling better. We are gonna have that planned, hopefully in the coming week or so. But again, solid effort, basketball, 81-69. I know, Jimmy, that of course we have to start with the Yaks, but there is another player that I know you definitely wanted to bring up and shout him out on his effort these last few games.
Yeah, we got to talk about Tony real quick, because Tony, I asked Coach AK about Tony in our interview. If you haven't heard it, go back in the YouTube feed and listen to our interview and watch our interview with Andy Kennedy prior to the season. I'd asked him a question about just kind of what does it mean in today's college athletics to have, with all the transition and people going from one team to another and all the change, like what does it mean to have a guy like Tony in the locker room, who's got that stability, who's got that leadership, who brings the energy to the team. And he's still doing all of that, but at the same time, now you're seeing Tony peak with his shooting capability. 5 made threes against Tulane, and Coach talked about it, all of which were big, much needed threes, right? Like it wasn't like UAB in the Tulsa game was out, pacing them by 20 points and it was a blowout. Like he was helping keep Tulane at a distance to like not allow them to come into Bartow Arena and get the upset. But Tony's a guy that he's a fan favorite. He brings the energy defensively. He's playing good defense presently, which this UAB team desperately needs. He's known to hit the occasional three, but he's been a slasher and get to the rim. And anybody on this team, I don't care who it is, anybody on this team as currently constructed that can stretch the floor just will make life easier for those guys that we have in the paint. We talked about Yaks and Christian Coleman, open up lanes for other things to occur. And you look at Tony over the course of the last really 6-7 games, and his plus minus, when he's on the floor, he's getting opportunities, but he's also really helping the team and continuity produce. And by that, I mean, over the course of this season, you look at the plus minus numbers, Tony is plus 96 for the year. That's actually third on this UAB basketball team, only behind a Christian Coleman and behind a Yaks. And so if you would have asked us that prior to the season, would it have been shocking? No. But to be ahead of Jabari McGee, Butta Johnson, and some of those other guys, AJ Vasquez, I think is not to discredit those, it's to credit Tony for his contributions on the floor, in addition to how great of a person that we know he is off the floor and in this UAB locker room too.
Well said, Jimmy. And shout out, you mentioned him, Jabari McGee. I mean, 4 from 7 from the field, 11 points, 3 from 3 for 3 for 3 for the free throw line. We're going to need more production with McGee going forward too. But yeah, AJ Vasquez, the 27 points against Tulsa to not even getting on the scoreboard against Tulane, and then fouling out, I believe. Actually, he did get on the scoreboard, 4 points. But yeah, 4 fouls. Man, it's just we need AJ Vasquez, who was a preseason second team All AAC pick in the preseason. We're going to need him and Butta Johnson to kind of a little more consistency. And Butta has found it. He struggled mildly early on, especially in the non-conference, but 11 points against Tulane, So especially this Sunday at FAU, we're gonna need those guys. But anything else on Tulane before we transition to kind of previewing the FAU game Sunday?
Let's talk about them Owls.
Yes. Well, these bigs down low for UAB. Yaks, Christian Coleman, Bradley Ezewiro. We're going to need them to be physical this Sunday at Boca. FAU comes into the matchup 2-1 also in league play. Their lone loss in the AAC got smoked on their home court by by Memphis. 90-62. But they're coming off 2 wins in conference play and 2 wins on the road, Jimmy. And, I don't care, it's at Charlotte, at ECU.
Yeah.
I don't care, who they are. But to get 2 wins in league play coming in, there's got to be a little extra, momentum for the Owls heading into this matchup Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you started with the physicality needed by the bigs, because that's one of the first things that kind of stood out to me. As you think about FAU, we're used to them having their 7-footer that has since transferred to Michigan. And I remember early in the season, I turned on the TV, and I think they were playing Central Florida on the road. And I said, who is this big 7-footer that they have? And no, they have another one. They have like 2 guys that are like 6'11" and 7 foot, and one is from Florida State, and the other one is from I don't even know where, but just a big 7 foot, 245-pound presence. And a lot of times when I've turned them on, which hasn't been much, but when I have turned them on, I've seen 2 bigs. Like I've seen them go with a 6'11" and a 7-footer on the floor at the same time, and they've got a really good player. I think he's one of the sole returnees, if I'm not mistaken, for FAU, which is Trey Carroll. He's 6'7", 233, and he's having a heck of a season. So you've got these guys in the post that are going to play physical. And UAB bigs, we love Yaks, we love Christian, we love Big Brad and these guys. They're going to have to really bring it to your point. Like, not just on the offensive boards, we're talking about defensively, like making their presence be known. We have the preseason defensive player of the year in Yaxter Lindenborg, and he's going to have a heck of a game staying out of foul trouble, but also making his presence felt on both ends of the floor in this matchup to be successful. And one guy that I find intriguing is in their rotation of guys that play both on the wing and at power forward is a Caleb Glenn, who started off at Louisville. And for our Patreon supporters, you probably recall that Caleb Glenn's name came up because UAB was involved in Caleb Glenn's recruitment. If I remember correctly, I think Caleb Glenn was local to the Louisville area in high school. And I think he played at the same high school as Tyron Moore, who is the guard on UAB's roster, who came over from Georgia Southern. And so there was like kind of this thought that Caleb Glenn could be the guy to come in as well and be a part of UAB. But FAU appears to have won that matchup off the court. And he's having a good season for them as well. And he is someone that is a ball getter that can rebound. I remember looking at his film, high offensive rebound percentage. So the things that we do well as it relates to points in the paint and second chance opportunities, those things are going to be challenged in this matchup. And so those are things to kind of watch out for, in my opinion. Yes, this FAU team is not constructed as they were in most recent years. But FAU has, from what I understand, a big NIL pool for basketball. They've got commitment. And so they were able to go out and replace the guys that they lost on their roster with quality talent. So it's kind of I'm going to speak out both sides of my mouth here. This is not the same FAU team that we have seen in prior years, but please don't overlook them. Like this FAU team, yeah, they got smoked by Memphis. Memphis was on, FAU was off, but this is going to be a difficult game for UAB. If UAB basketball wins this game, of course, I'd love a split. I'd take a split. Let me say that way. I'd take a split between FAU and South Florida. If UAB were to go 2-0 on this road trip, I would I'd really be forgetting. I don't even know what happened in non-conference play. I would be just hyped as hell. Right. So anyways, UAB is going to have to play a great game, and I think it's going to start there in the paint, making our presence known and making our presence felt on both sides of the court.
Yeah, well said. And that 7-footer is from Lithuania,
Okay.
Matas Vakiatis. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Hey, credit to you for trying because I was not
I
even
was
going to
gonna
try.
say I thought about not even trying, but I said, hey, I'll give it a shot. But 7 foot, 245. So Yaks is a Wiro. And Jimmy, we were talking before we recorded. You love the length of Christian Coleman, but man, you got to get in there this Sunday. Show early on that you're going to be a physical presence. Yaks will Lindabor, hopefully. I'm sure their scouts going to be in that arena. Hey, let's continue from the Tulane game and just kind of take it to them. And you look at that Memphis game that FAU kind of got whooped to start conference play, but kind of poor shooting from the Owls that day. I believe they were 5 for 30, I think, from the 3-point line in that game. Just abysmal for the Owls. But yeah, UAB is going to need to bring it. Yes, there's no John L. Davis. There's no well, there's another 7-footer, but this isn't. They're not as talented, but you can't overlook them. And we're coming in with momentum, two in a row in conference play. FAU is coming in to this game with momentum, winners of 2 in a row in conference play. So it's going to be this is going to be a battle. And I do have that box score, 5 of 31 from 3.
What did you said, John L. Davis? What did I wish Darian was here? What did he used to call
John L. LeBron James Davis?
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness. I mean, I'm not going to say that they don't have a guy that can do that to us, but thank goodness that he's in Arkansas. I'd be so curious if we have any FAU fans listen to this, like if they follow John L. I look at Arkansas's box score. I don't think he's starting for Arkansas. He may have at the beginning of the year, but I think he's coming off the bench, and I'd be curious, kind of what FAU fans feel and think about John L. Davis. I'm assuming it's like us. It's like, hey, he got the money. How are you going to blame the guy? He played really well at FAU, so who cares? But and I think what is the guys? What was their 7-foot? It's Vlad.
Vlad. Yeah, Vladimir Golden.
Yeah.
Vladimir Golden.
Yeah, because our guy the Blazes, I remember him doing like a thing on Instagram once that was like Vlad trash bag or something like that. Shout out to the Blazes.
The Blazers.
That's right. Yeah, but huge game. FAU's good. Don't overlook them. They're not as good on paper, but UAB, hey, we struggle with a lot less this basketball season. So conference games on the road against anybody will be tough. FAU's going to be hyped. They're going against the defending conference champions. They're coming into their building. It's going to be loud, nationally televised, watch party, Cahaba Brewing Company. So it's a big game for everybody. And if UAB can come out of there with a win, but we need a basketball watch party victory.
Please.
We just need to just go like we of course were able to watch UAB, get their ticket to the dance, and win the conference tournament, so that we'll live forever in remembering that. But let's get a good basketball watch party victory with all of our supporters, and let's get hyped, and let's start just having some unrealistic predictions that we're going to go undefeated the rest of the conference season, and we're going to beat Memphis twice. Let's just get some good vibes going again.
Yes, need that Cahaba magic this Sunday at 4:00. And if y'all can't make it this Sunday, there will be one more watch party in the regular season for basketball. It'll be the East Carolina game, but I think that's a weeknight. I think it's a Tuesday night. So if y'all can, I know everybody's going to be antsy to get out of the house. Come Sunday, 4:00, Cahaba, and watch the game with us, and let's have some Cahaba magic to get the dub. Jimmy, before we close, I just looked up Vlad Golden's stats. He freaking had 36 points against UCLA for Michigan. 30.
Vlad trash bag.
I know, man. I'm glad he's over there.
Wasn't it FAU? I'm just having like memories. Like, didn't he like miss like an alley-oop like that would have like won the game for them, and then went into overtime, we beat him or whatever. So that's what I'm going to remember. I'm not going to remember all of his blocks and all of his just other antics or whatnot, or his flops that he would have from time to time. But hey, talk about getting the bag and dropping 36 on an opponent in a power conference. Like, kudos to that guy. Maybe we'll see him in the NBA for all I know. So
yeah, maybe we'll see him in the NCAA tournament.
Maybe we're seeing him for the Squadron.
Let's go. Well, all right, guys. Hey, hope you'll join us at Cahaba Brewing Company this Sunday at 4:00. We'll be back next week with me, Jimmy, Darian, to recap some hoops and hopefully talk some UAB football recruiting. There's a lot of it going on as we speak. But we'll see you guys next week. As always, just blaze.